Welcome to another episode where I get to speak to incredible guests from around the world. And this particular guest that I've got on today, I have been chasing for several months. I saw him on, I think, LinkedIn, bumped into him about 7 or 8 months ago, and I've been following his posts, and I'm absolutely inspired. Festus Akinbusoye is the Police and Crime Commissioner for Bedfordshire Police in the UK. He is, at the time that he took on the position, he was the first Black Briton to take on that role of Police and Crime Commissioner, so really breaking some barriers there. And currently, he is the only Police and Crime Commissioner from a Black and ethnic minority background. So a lot of barriers broken. I'm really intrigued to hear what you've got to say, Festus. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
Before we go into the interview, I was talking to you about, what human-centered leadership means to me and what the podcast is all about. And we had some fun. And I always believe fun in the workplace is absolutely critical because that's what makes us human. We're all human at the end of the day. And behind you, there was a huge poster of a football team, and I didn't recognize it straight away. But do you want to just tell me what happened there?
Well, yeah, I at the National Black Police Association's annual conference, which was being held in Bedfordshire, my very first year as Police and Crime Commissioner, there was an auction for a Luton Town football club signed jersey. Of course, they've just been promoted to the championship and they're doing extremely well at the moment. And so it was quite a highly sought after thing. But there was one particular person in that conference, in that auction, who loved Luton Town Football Club more than me. I'm an Arsenal man through and through, you see. But I thought, you know what? Just because I feel like it, I'm going to just outbid him. And that was the Assistant Chief Constable for Bedfordshire Police. So we both got into a bidding war towards the end, and I outbid him. Yes, and I've got the I've got it now.
You don't particularly want it in your office, do you?
No, but look, if it was an Arsenal one, I would like it more. But I've got some very, very special plans for that. It's been here now for over 2 years. But for about 2 years, I've got plans for it. Very special plans.
Is the Assistant Chief Constable still talking to you, or has he got over it now?
Funny you should say that. He's an amazing fellow. His attention to detail is, impeccable. He breathes policing. He's just a good man, and he so far has been a real treat to work with, and he'll be very much missed when he retires in a couple of months' time.
That's brilliant. And a great accolade for any leader, to be honest. Talking about leadership, Festus, one thing I've noticed about you, aside from the fact that, the first Black Briton and the only BAME Police Crime Commissioner, so you would obviously stand out to me. I was a vice president of the National Black Police Association back in 1999 when we first formed the NBPA. So I always have a keen eye in terms of what inclusivity and diversity looks like in the police service and the public sector. So congratulations. I know it's belated, but congratulations on your post. And thank you for pushing forward and doing all the things that you're doing, because I look at you on LinkedIn and you seem to be everywhere. Is it that you don't like being in the office like I used to be? Or is it that you're just so stretched in your diary?
When you're in public service, my view is that you need to do your job, but the public also need to see you doing your job. I mean, there are those people who think that I spend all my time on social media, and when in fact I probably only post about half of what I do, because a good chunk of it is they're quite sensitive, and I can't put them in the public domain. So if you think I'm busy with what you see on social media, just imagine what life actually really is like.
Oh, of course. I know that this is only the tip of the iceberg, isn't it?
But also, I do believe in the fact that there are certain people who need to see people like me.
Yeah.
So I have a choice to use my position to just do the stuff that's in the background, and I can still be effective.
Yes.
Or I can do what I do, choose to be visible, make myself very accessible to the public, to the media, not because I need any attention. I'm very, very cool with myself. I don't need the attention. But, there's a young Asian lad in Bradford or in Essex. There's a white working class girl in Kent or in East Ham, and there's a young black boy in Birmingham or in Rochdale who needs to see someone like me on TV, not playing football, not in music or in entertainment, doing what I do. And so that comes at a cost, by the way, to me personally, but I think it's a price worth paying for those young people especially.
This resonates with me so strongly because when I joined the police service, and I remembered yesterday, it's 40 years and 2 weeks ago when I joined the police service, a long time ago. And it unfortunately reminds me of how old I am as well, But I also recognize that I was a brown speck in a sea of white, and that I had this leadership responsibility to be visible for people who needed to see people like me. So, and I completely resonate with what you're saying in terms of the cost to you as an individual. I've tried to explain this to so many people in the past. What would you say is the cost to you as an individual to do that, to be that pioneer, to be that visible representation?
The one is the expectation that sometimes people have as well. It's a bit overwhelming sometimes. And of course, there's the invitations to come on podcasts. People
chasing you for months and months and months.
And then it's that. Look, I mean, that's the least of my worries. But obviously now with social media, you also attract some very unpleasant individuals.
Yes.
And I was just thinking about this the other day, that the more you put your head above the parapet, the more likely you are to get hit with something on your, and when been having a bald head as well, it's a bit more painful, when people throw stuff at you. But there is that. The other part of it is this. I am in the Conservative Party. I am also in policing. Those are two areas that someone of my skin tone should not apparently be involved with.
Yeah.
In fact, I was discussing this with, Beth Rigby on Sky News yesterday, and that show's going to be aired tomorrow evening around 9:00. And that is constantly have to keep explaining to people, white, black, whatever, and everything else, every shade in between, why you are who you are. It's difficult, but I've come to accept and embrace it. Because I see it as more of an education piece, not a how dare you thing.
I used to find it quite exhausting when you're repeating the same lines over and over again. And actually, as you quite rightly say, not to try and come across as being frustrated or angry, because every person who asks the question is a new person.
Yes.
So they're hearing the answer for the first time. But for you, that answer is like on repeat all the time. It's quite exhausting.
But, attitude is so important. Like you probably had, people from, your community saying, look, how dare you join the police? They stigmatize us. They do this to us. You're a sellout. You're a traitor. I get that as well. And there was a point when I was thinking, well, I don't have to answer your questions. Would you ask that to a white person? Would you ask that to, this person? But I now see it actually as a blessing, actually a real opportunity to actually explain to people that, I'm here within policing not because I think policing is perfect to everyone, because I actually want to make it better. And I'm actually in a very, very powerful position to actually do that. So would you rather I was here, and here are some of the impacts that I've had already, and I can tell you what those are, because I understand the nuances, the challenges, the systemic issues, and I can fix them because I have the power to do so, and here are the people who are benefiting from it, or would you rather I stay in your shoes and moan about it, and nothing changes? And that then lowers the tension a little bit. So now I just choose to see things, as an opportunity to educate and to engage and to inspire rather than, how dare you ask me that question kind of thing.
No, I understand that completely. And just on this issue around representation, I mean, all the time that I've ever been involved in the police service, 40 years plus, as I say now, we've always been talking about diversity, representation, inclusivity. We've used different languages and different terminology over that space of time. I sense that we're still not there yet in terms of representation, in terms of diversity and what inclusion really means. What does it mean to you?
Representation and diversity could be looked at in different ways. But for me, I want to start with the benefits of it as a starting point. Otherwise, you don't want to have diversity for the sake of it, because that does not help anyone.
Exactly. Yeah.
Including those from diverse communities, right? You want to get the best and the brightest in the best jobs for them, right? So not all Asian women can be chief constables. In the same way that not all white men can be chief constables. But those who can should absolutely get the chance to become exactly that without any barriers being put in the way. But so I start with why we need to have this. And my view has always been that imagine having a government department. And we're not even talking about the politicians here, because that's a different, that's a symptom of the electorate decision making, right? But you're talking about the officials in the Home Office or in the MOJ or Department of Education. And I'm talking about top, and people, you never see these people. You never see them. But they are the director generals of government departments. They are the top senior civil servants. They are the ones who make things happen. If all of these people, when they get together on the implementation of a government policy, we're all from one educational background, one social background, one ethnic background, making decisions for an increasingly diverse population, not just in fact of one gender as well, by the way. Imagine them making decisions about the implementation of government policy for an increasingly diverse population. I don't care how good you are, and I don't care how aware you are. We are all shaped by our own set of experiences. It's just we can't separate our experiences from our decision making any more than we can separate our DNA from our bodies. They're all intertwined. So, this is one for me. That's one of the reasons why I think we do need to have a diverse decision-making environment, hence why we need to have diversity coming in so they can get to that top eventually.
And there's a big difference, isn't there, between visible diversity, what I would term as demographic diversity, and cognitive diversity. And yes, as he quite rightly says, you could have people from all genders, all colours, all races, all have been to the same college, same university, and therefore will all think alike.
Exactly right.
So what is the point in having a rainbow of a boardroom if they're all going to speak with the same voice? For me, diversity goes way beyond that. Diversity is about diversity of thought.
This is a great point you make, because look, the reality is that we have black and brown skinned people who deny the existence of racism, for example, right? But then you have white people who acknowledge and accept that there is racism and something needs to be done about it. Who would you rather have in a room?
Absolutely. I would rather have the person that accepts it and knows that something needs to be done about it.
You have people in society today who believe that there are no social structures that prevent us from doing things. How you approach those social structures is a different matter in terms of your psychology, but there are challenges there. I'd rather have people who recognize this, but also see that it is not the be all and end all of people's aspirations, but it is an obstacle that needs to be addressed or worked around, than to have people who are in denial. My attitude around diversity is that it is very, very important. It is not just about the color of the skin, it's also about our thought processes and our backgrounds and our social class, because we do need rich people as well, don't get me wrong. We need people who have created wealth. We need all to be around. But my problem is when we start having senior decision makers come from one monolithic environment, making decisions for a much, much diverse environment. That would always cause problems.
I knew there was a reason why I wanted you on here, because we think so alike. It's great to see that. But, from an organizational point of view, in order for that cognitive diversity to come into the organization, we have to create the environment where we accept a difference in views. This.
Yes. Yeah.
Particularly public sector organizations will have this subtext where, we talk about this is how things were always done. I've heard that phrase so many times myself in different language or different sort of terminology, but essentially the same. What do we need to do in the police service to create that environment where a difference in thought is welcomed and something that we embrace?
I go into meetings sometimes with the most senior level of police in the whole of the country.
Yep.
With police chiefs council, the chief constables and PCCs get together, and I'm the only black person there, and this happens.
Yeah.
And I've never there was the initial, when I first started, I did feel a little bit, overwhelmed. But one thing that I can say to all of these men and women is that I never was made to feel as though my views did not matter.
Yeah.
Not once. In fact, I felt there was a desire to actually listen to me more, that they actually wanted to learn. So at the top level, I saw a genuine desire to actually listen and understand even whatever I was talking about, whether it's on diversity or around, the use of police powers, disproportionality, whatever the case might be, cutting crime, all that kind of stuff. I found that. So that was the first thing. The second thing, I also realized that it takes a lot of courage to be willing to speak up about what is obvious to you, but might not be obvious to other people.
Very true.
So we think that it's only in schools where, you're afraid to put your hand up, because you might get the answer wrong. But this happens in boardrooms as well. This happens in government departments. This happens at the highest level.
Yeah, this is way beyond policing now. This is way beyond policing.
Oh, yeah. It takes a lot of courage, a lot of self-confidence to be able to speak up. And that's something that I have always chosen to do. And not to worry about how I might look. I say what I feel in always a very respectful, considerate, and balanced way. That's second. But the third thing as well is that I find that I think needs to be done is, how do you then translate this at an organizational wide level?
And therein lies, I think, probably the biggest challenge.
And I think one thing that we see in policing and in some uniform, disciplined environment is that everything is kind of like a command and control and thing. You can't change values on a command and control basis. It takes persuasion and willingness to be open and talk about things. And I don't know if all people in leadership either feel comfortable enough to have that dialogue with their team or have the courage to say what is blindingly obvious.
What I'm finding, Festus, and this is a positive, is I do a lot of work around emotional intelligence with a whole wide range of organizations, and including a number of police forces. And I do assessments on individual leaders around where their emotional intelligence levels are. And I am finding that there are more and more emotionally intelligent leaders in the police service now. So it is a different environment from when I left the police service 8 years ago. And this command and control kind of style of leadership, I talk about 6 styles of leadership, and command and control would be at one end. At the other end would be coaching leadership, or, affiliative leadership, people-centered leadership. And I'm finding there's more of that coming in. But there's still a way to go, because I think you get to a certain leadership level where actually it's no longer about shouting out commands. It's about influencing, and it's about persuasion.
And the way that I would like to think that my style of leadership, it's about a very, very, very strong use of soft power.
Describe that for me. I've heard this term before, but I want the listeners to really understand this.
For me, it's about, you've got power, but it takes a lot of wisdom to know that you actually don't need to use it.
Yeah, great.
And I have had to grow to learn about the power that I have as a police and crime commissioner. But I hardly have to use those powers in the way that most people will think I could do, which I'm sure others might probably do. Most of the things that I get done because I can pick up a phone and talk to a superintendent or a chief constable or a sergeant or a PC or the chief constable even, or a fellow PCC, and just have a chat and say, look, can you do me a favor, mate?
So in essence, what you're saying is leadership for you is about building relationships, and then you can leverage those relationships with conversations.
Yes, but you have to build that relationship. You have to. And, you know, and I think the way that I do that, and one thing I found is that in any environment, and I run a business before I came into this role where I had about 60 people working for me. No, I can't think of any working environment where nobody wants to be treated like a human being. Not one. You know, there's this program that it used to be called, where they have this song where we all want to be in a place where everybody knows our name. Cheers. It's called Cheers. Cheers. You know, we all want to be in an environment where everybody knows our name. And there's something powerful about that. And I don't always remember names, but I remember people. I remember events. I remember what we talked about. It could be 10 years ago. I will remember what we talked about. I do have that kind of a memory. And then eventually you can tweak out people's names during the conversations from them. Oh yeah, I remember you. I know you're cool. Yeah.
I'm awful with names. I remember people's faces and I remember our conversations.
Yes.
I'm a bit like you in that regard.
Everybody wants that. So I will, you know, whether it's the cleaner, whether it's the estates people who move our furniture around, I genuinely do not see any difference in them whatsoever to the chief constable. And we'll have a chat about what they do on the weekend, about their kids. If one person tells me about, oh, well, my son has got autism, or whatever it is, 3 weeks' time, I remember that information. And we'll talk about it. And I think people appreciate that.
I used to come into work an hour early just so I could sit down and have a cup of tea with the cleaner. The stuff that I learned from the cleaner was just incredible. And I always found that I had the cleanest office, by the way.
Yes, you know, and if we've got a lady here called, I just call her Auntie. She's an elderly lady. You might have seen a picture of that I took with her. She cleans. She's one of the cleaners in our building, and she comes to my office to clean it. And I always say hello to her, but this particular day I thought I'd just have a chat with her, and she was just amazing. And I used to think that the longest serving person I ever came across in this building had been here for about 20 years. When I spoke with Auntie, she'd been working here for about 26 years.
It's the unseen veterans, isn't it?
And for me, I consider that is power. I mean, there's this book on the 5 love languages, right? And I think in the workplace, it's a similar thing, because every time we exercise this kind of emotional intelligence with people, we are creating a credit in their emotional bank account that is specifically belonging to us.
Now, you see many organizations, when I go into organizations talking about culture and culture change and emotional intelligence, almost immediately you get from some organizations, well, what's the tangible benefits of this? How does that affect my bottom line? And I find that really frustrating, because, as you say, fundamentally, we know in our heart of hearts, where you've got people working, those people want to be treated as human beings. They want to feel valued, appreciated, heard and seen. If you get that, they will work beyond the minimum standard. They will deliver more for you.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing is, well, is this, in terms of the bottom line that people keep talking about, you know, bottom line is not just about your P&L. It's also about your public reputation. It's also about how your organization comes out of a crisis. And every organization that deals with other human beings, in other words, every organization that is there to make profit, will, in some way, shape, or form, at some point in its lifetime, if it lasts more than a day, will face a crisis. Your people are the ones that will determine, in many respects, how well you come out of that crisis. And in the world of social media nowadays, people will leak stuff. If you're a nasty organization and a crisis moment comes, they're going to write stuff about your business anonymously that, well, I saw this coming. How do you put a price on that?
Yeah, one of the critical things that we have to try and create in organization is this sense of trust. Trust in the organization as a foundation of the organization. If your people trust you, you trust your people, then you are more likely to work at a much deeper level together. So how do you create that trust in the organization with your people?
For me, what I've tried to do is to always be consistent. This is by no means a way of saying that, well, and this is a kind of a laissez-faire environment. People can just do whatever they like. They know my values. They know my vision. They know who I am and what I'm about. And it's amazing how everybody potentially follows the trajectory of movement of a leader. You set the standard. Somehow people just start to morph into, the mold of the leadership figure. So
yeah, I mean, it's what we call the leadership shadow, right?
absolutely. And in fact, when I was recruiting the top leadership team in my office here, I made it very clear to them that I would judge them by how well they treat the staff in this office. And I said, well, I want to make sure that everyone in my office is doing well, they're happy in their job, they're delivering what we want them to deliver without question. But I want them to know that they are valued here, and I'm going to hold you accountable for that. And I have this habit of not caring too much about chain of command, because there's no chain of command up my way because I'm at the top of my tree, right? It can only go the other way. And I have this habit of engaging with people in between and at the very bottom, which I think initially some people who were higher up did not really like that, but I got to them eventually as well, so they were happy about that. But the reason why I do that is because not just but it's because I want to have a feel of what's going on in my organization. I can't do that just from reading executive reports from the chief constable and his team. That can only tell me so much. But if you are a sentient human being, if you are someone who's got an inkling of emotional intelligence, you walk around a building, you will just, I don't know how to describe it. It's like a feeling, you can just tell.
It's what I call the radar. So it's social awareness is essentially what we're talking about. And I say, if you master yourself first, you've really got to understand yourself, understand what your emotions are, how your emotions affect your behaviors. And those emotions that affect your behaviors adversely, you need to fix that. So you need to change some habits, thinking habits, mind habits, and even physical habits. When you've done that, then you switch on this radar. And this radar is really about finding out the nuances. What's going on, the subtext of the organization in your team, not what's written in your policy, not what's written in some executive report, not what's written on the fancy posters on the wall. What's really going on? What's the kind of language that people are using? Where are people frustrated and what are people frustrated or happy about? Really understand that, really feel that. And when you've got that, you've got a pulse on the organization.
We really have to develop this culture in British working environment and increasingly within any working environment in the world, where we actually allow people to be people in work rather than a number on a payroll sheet. I can't think of anything more dehumanizing. I can't think of anything more soul destroying. And I can't think of anything more negative on people's well-being and productivity than to feel invisible in their workplace. And anything that can be done to make people feel, we know who you are, is only going to be worthwhile.
And I think particularly since the pandemic, people have recalibrated their priorities, and what's important for them right now is to feel psychologically safe, to feel appreciated, valued, heard and seen. These are the kind of things that people are looking for. And that's why we've got the Great Resignation. That's why people are leaving, talent is leaving organizations, because they're not feeling that they are being seen and being valued. And I think you're absolutely right. We need to see people for what they are, human beings, and embrace them as human beings, and also embrace within that the fact that human beings are complex by nature. what one person thinks and does is going to be different to what another person thinks and does, because they've had different journeys in life. And it's if an organization can embrace that aspect, that thought, that idea, then actually it's a difficult journey for the organization to make. But when they make that journey, on the other side of it is incredible.
And then some people will argue, oh yeah, but that's a costly exercise. How can, if you got an organization of 40,000 people, how can you try to adapt to 40,000 people? Well, you do it every day in your own work of life. You make it sound like it's rocket science. All I'm saying here is you come to work feeling like you are a human being, not a uniform. Afford other people the same privilege. It's really not that hard.
It really isn't, because what we're talking about is human nature here, and that is natural to all of us, right? But we make it so scientific.
Exactly right. Let's just be humans. It doesn't have to be. And it's not about, let's just be nice and pally. No, of course, we all have a job to do, and everybody knows that they have to deliver on jobs, but ultimately, I feel that people do the best when they have a sense of self wherever they are. And as a commissioner and as an employer, as a boss around here, I just want everyone to know that, yes, this guy's got power to make things happen, but actually, I just like the fact that he's human. And like I said at the beginning, it takes wisdom to know when to wield your power. I very rarely have to use that. I've had to use that on a couple of occasions when it became necessary. And it was always when it was time to fix a problem for someone. It's never had to be to get a policy through, no. It's never had to be that, because we've been able to work in a collegiate way to get things over the line. And in some cases, even though I didn't have to, I understood that it's okay for me to I don't have to fight over everything. Not everything needs to be about, I'm quite cool with, stepping down on an idea and let the chief have his way. I don't mind that. I don't mind. But the time when I've had to actually wield my influence the most have been when I needed to unblock something for someone. Without which, probably nothing would have changed.
We haven't even touched policing really, but the goal that has come out is around leadership, and that can apply to whichever organisation you might be in right now. I think one of the points Festus was making, remember that every single person in your organisation is a human being, and as a human being, they want to feel valued, appreciated, heard and seen. And if you can nail that, then you will have a far better organisation, including the ability to come out of a crisis, the ability to affect your bottom line, and the ability to perform better as an organisation. Festus, thank you so much for your wisdom. Really, really appreciate it.
Pleasure.